for this process, we're going to need our finish coats. We're going to need our syringes, which is very important because this keeps everything measured correctly. We're going to need a brush, and you make sure this is a craft brush. It's just a nylon brush, very easy to work with. This is a throwaway brush. You have your plate with some aluminum foil on it because this is where we're going to be doing our mixing, is onto this plate. We also have our bubble buster, which you'll see I'll use it, I'll light it, and I'll run it across to get the bubbles out of the finish coat, and a lighter for that. And the most important part of this whole thing, as you noticed, our hand wrapper is still here, and our stand is still here, what we used throughout the whole process. But now we're going to bring in another component here, which is our drying machine. We talked about this in the beginning. It's necessary to have a drying machine. If you don't have a drying machine, and I've never done it in 1,000 rods that I've built, is you have to turn it by hand every, I think it's every 5 minutes, a quarter turn for like 3 hours. That's not real fun. So we buy this little drying machine, which makes it a lot easier. Before you put your finish coat on or even start mixing your finish coat, is to check your rod to make sure, because this is it. You put the finish coat on, that's where the guides are going to end up. So what I like to do is I will make sure that all of my guides are lined up correctly, and what I'll do is first is I'll take it apart and I will line down it, making sure not to touch the threads at any point in time because of the oils in your hands will contaminate your threads, is to look down the rod to make sure. And how I line things up is I close one eye and I make sure that blank goes down the middle of each ring of that guide. I'll take this section also, and I will make sure that that guide is lined up with my reel seat this way. It looks like they've done a good job. Everything looks good. Then I'll take my sections and I'll put it back together, making sure not to touch any of the threads with my hand. I will sight up my rod. Make sure my ferrule is tight. Tightening your ferrule because you don't want that coming loose during the process. So now this rod is ready to put a finish coat on. So the drying machine is a very simple drying machine. This one has the diaphragm. You just stick it in there and it'll turn it. But you make sure whenever you're doing anything that you don't bump any of these guides because you've already looked at it one time. You don't want to have to go back and look at it again. So I'm going to make sure that I don't touch anything or rub anything, and I'm going to stick this rod in the diaphragm, just like that. None of my threads are touching. None of the guides are going to hit anything when they roll. Everything is square. I personally will come back and make sure that my rod doesn't jump out anywhere, so I will strap it down, at least in one spot.